Hello, everyone. My name is Dominga Robinson. I'm one of the consultants with SaskCulture. Welcome to the Cameco Creative Kids Northern Cultural Fund webinar. Today I'm going from Treaty 4 in the traditional homeland of the Métis. I'm in Regina at the SaskCulture offices. Um, we're going to be covering a lot of topics and information today. So if you could just hold off questions until the end, you can type those into the chat as they come up. Hopefully, maybe I'll cover them as we're going through. If not, I will address questions and leave things open at the end so that we have that time to. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about an intro of who SaskCulture is and who I am and why I'm here to talk about this. So if you're unfamiliar, SaskCulture is went too far. SaskCulture is a nonprofit, community-based, volunteer-driven provincial organization. What we do is we distribute a portion of the lottery funding, lottery funds and ticket sales that we get in the province. We distribute that back into the community through funding programs. Our goal is to ensure culture is happening in all of the communities and that everybody gets to participate and engage with culture. We also run a program called Creative Kids. This program is about supporting youth. So all of the administration funding to Creative Kids donation charity program. So 100% of the donations and sponsorships go directly towards the communities with that program. So what is Creative Kids? It is a individual funding program. Families can apply up to $750 per child per calendar year for children aged 4 to 19 to be able to engage in creative activities. These are the arts, the drama, the dance, the music, and culture. It is based on financial barriers and financial need, but it is available to everyone provincially. I want to kind of distinguish between the Creative Kids individual program and what we're going to be talking about. Although that program is open to everyone in the North, we have created a funding program to help get more money up into the North and get more activity happening in those communities. So there is the individual program where you can apply for $750. It does have a lot of different criteria than the funding program. So if you are interested in that, I feel free to go ahead to the Creative Kids Saskatchewan website to check out information on that. Or you can contact Sean Bosch at the information that's on the screen, and he can help talk to you about individual applications to the program. But getting back to what we're here to talk about today is the Cameco Creative Kids Northern Cultural Fund. This is a grant program where organizations can apply for programs that are going to connect youth and children to unique artistic experiences, and that it has to be accessible to community. So it provides financials to those communities to hire service providers to get the supplies that are needed to be able to run creative programming in the community. The request amount that you can ask for on this grant is $7,500. There is no contribution needed from applicants, so you can just ask for that money and go directly to programming with that. And it has a deadline coming up of March 15th. Now, who can apply? You must be a registered nonprofit organization who has been in existence for at least one fiscal year. You should have a primarily cultural mandate if you are a nonprofit organization, but if you don't, you need to be able to explain why you're doing cultural work and kind of some of your history around potentially doing that in the past and why you're deviating from your mandate. You can also be a First Nations or a municipality. You must be in good standing with the Saskatchewan Lotteries Community Grant Program. And this is one of the grants that we do have that is actually open to schools. So any of the schools can apply for this grant, but the stipulation there is that it must be outside of school hours. So this is after school or the weekends or over the summer even, winter break, those types of things. So for all of these different eligible organizations, none of them can have outstanding follow-up reports with us. So you have to have cleared out any other previous grants that you may have with SaskCulture, and you have to be located within the Northern Sport and Culture Recreation District. If you're unfamiliar with whether you are in that district or not, here is a map. You can also find access to this map and further district maps on the Sask Sport website. So that's sasksport.ca. And so, yeah, this funding is designated for communities within that northern area. So what kind of things can you do with this grant? Well, you can do arts and creative activities. So these are your drawing, your sculpture, your photography. We've seen some cool photography projects coming out. You can make films. You could do creative writing projects, music recording, printmaking. Those are the types of things we mean by arts and creative activities. You can also engage in culture. These are your heritage activities, Indigenous traditional arts, uh, Indigenous language lessons potentially, if you'd like, genealogy, archaeology, regalia making. Then there's also dance, where this is your hip hop. You can do your modern, your jigging, your tap, your salsa, powwow. We've seen hoop dancing projects coming through this grant. And then you can also do your drama and theater, music, and then camps. Be careful around the camps because these are they have to be arts or culture camp kind of activities. Leadership camps, 4-H camps, Boys and Girl Scout camps, and Bible camps are not eligible, but art camps, museums camps, theater camps, circus camps, and we've seen some of those happening in the north. Those types of activities are eligible camp activities. So what are some of the things that you can't do with this? Well, you can't do fitness, you can't do sport or recreation. Science and religion are generally not eligible. If you feel like it might be cultural, you can always contact me and I can discuss it with you and we can try to figure that out. But these are the types of things that we're not going to cover. So these are your activities happening during regular school hours, which I stipulated before. The fitness activities, so that's your yoga, your baton, cheerleading, or sports. Again, those camps that I talked about, any Lego-based activities and camps, youth leadership conferences, and then science and engineering-based activities. Although we've been seeing some video game designing coming through, so those types of things are eligible. You cannot do programming, web development and coding, Bible camps, art therapy, French or English classes, and then fees for choir trips, band trips, or school fees. Any activities that focus on technical skills like woodworking, sewing, or cooking, unless there's an artistic or cultural aspect. So if I'm sewing ribbon skirts, that would be an eligible activity. If I'm just sewing shirts, that's not necessarily an eligible activity. So what are some of the things you can pay for with this? Well, all of the expenses need to be tied to the activity that you're having. That's one thing. The majority of this grant should be going to cover off wages and fees for service providers. So these are the people who are actually going to be delivering the programming. There is a CARFAC rate. If you're unfamiliar with that, it's CARFAC. You're going to want to try to make sure that you're adhering to the CARFAC rates for facilitators and artists and professional cultural workers. That's an important part of this, that you're paying them for preparatory time as well as actual execution of the project. This will also cover travel and accommodations for facilitators and participants, facility and equipment rentals if needed. So if you have to rent a place to do it, then that is eligible, as well as supplies needed. That should probably be almost the second highest expense, is around the supplies needed to do the activity. So the cost should be the people to do it, the supplies to do it, venue, and other things needed, like nutritional costs are also eligible. Those shouldn't be a high priority or a high number, but those are eligible. We do understand you need to feed children if you're doing activities like this. We do cover off insurance, evaluation, and then advertising and promotional costs. But then again, those should be on the smaller end of things. You should almost have a built-in audience at some point with this, and so promotion shouldn't need to be too expensive. Some of the things that we don't pay for with this are retroactive program funding, so we can't go back and pay for something that's already happened. We can't pay for construction, renovation, or repairs, capital expenditures, the cash prizes, or gifts. So be careful around the gifts. That's one that we see some people make mistakes with sometimes. The purchase of alcohol is, of course, not eligible for any lottery funding. Volunteer hours. So you cannot be counting volunteer hours as income. They are just volunteering. Allowances and wages or personal expenses for registrants or participants. So you can't be paying people to participate. We also don't cover off operating costs and salaries of existing staff. So if I'm already working for SaskCulture and I get asked to do a webinar like this, I'm not going to charge additional funds to someone to pay me to do that. If it is something that's outside of my job description, so if SaskCulture asks me to host a writing workshop, where a creative writing workshop, that's not something within my job description, we can explore. So we don't cover off normal operating expenses, and you're gonna want to keep out in-kind contribution. You can always explain those in the budget, but don't actually put dollar amounts connected to those things. You're gonna want to keep it to just finances and the actual funds that are coming in and the actual funds that are going out. So what are some of the priorities for this? This one has priorities on programs that are facilitated by youth under 30 and that are for children and youth. Obviously, it needs to be for youth 4 to 19, but if it's a youth leading it, that is a higher priority for the grant, so you're going to get bumped up a little bit, as well as strong community partnerships. They like to see people working together and utilizing resources and sharing. So strong community partnerships is another priority for this grant, as well as projects that are focusing on implementing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action or other reconciliation efforts. That's something that is a priority for SaskCulture moving forward, and so we've made sure that the grants try to address those things through activity. And then a lower priority for the fund are projects and organizations that are not already funded significantly by other lottery supported grant programs. So if you're already receiving a huge amount of money through one of the other funding programs and funding avenues, you're going to be in a lower priority. It doesn't mean that you're not eligible, it just means that you're in a lower priority. It's intended to try and get that money to as many communities as possible and as many activities happening as possible. So I'm going to go ahead now and talk about some of the successful applicants that have happened. And some of the successful projects. So you can see here, L'Orange Public Library had an after-school arts club program. L'Orange did a dance camp where they had a week-long dance camp for kids aged 5 to 12. The hoop troop out of Creighton, they got costumes and hoops and revived their hoop troop there. And so they're out touring and doing activities in the community and entertaining that way now. Denair Beach Recreation Board had a little artist program. The Northern Saskatchewan International Children's Festival, some of you may be familiar with this. They've been going through the north for the last couple of years, doing week-long interactive circus and arts training camps in the schools, where they bring all that equipment in and all those professionals to engage with that type of activity. There was a learning to square dance in the Illa Lacrosse. Buffalo Narrows did a project where they taught youth how to use their cell phones to tell stories and use social media as a resource to be able to do that. And then at Hector Thibodeau Community School, they had an artist revitalizing our arts and culture. So it was after school program with painting and beading for youth between the ages of 7 and 18. Creighton Creative Kodiaks Valley View Community School had a leader in the making where they had arts and cultural programming with on the land activities. Again, the Saskatchewan Children's Festival was up there. Buffalo Narrows had a summer culture day camp this past summer where they learned how to do drum making and dream catcher making. And then up in Black Lake, they did a 2-week culture camp where they did cleaning and filleting fish and caribou and really took the children out on the land with the elders to learn about some of the culture. So that gives you a bit of idea of some of the things that are being funded through the grant. There is access to the full list of the past grant recipients and how much they got and what they did available on our website. There's the link there at the bottom of the page. So what are the things that you're going to have to answer when coming through this application? You're going to have to provide your organizational information. This is your mandate, your list of board members, your history of programming in arts and culture, and your organizational support material. The purpose of this is to introduce yourself to the peer assessors who will be making the decisions on who it is, who's going to get the funding. So you're going to want to make sure that you're giving them a good picture of who you are as an agency, as a school, as a community. And then you're going to want to get into the project description. This is probably one of the more important parts of this whole thing, where you're going to want to outline exactly what activities are taking place. This needs to be quite detailed. Just saying that we're going to be doing cultural workshops is not sufficient. We do need to know what type of activity people will be doing at those workshops, how often they're going to happen. So the planning timelines is something that a lot of people don't think about, but it is something that they assess you on, whether you've provided yourself sufficient time and thought through all of the steps that you're going to need to plan it, as well as a potential schedule of events of agenda, or an agenda that's going to be taking place. They're going to want to know who is going to be facilitating this? Who are your participants? Do you have a target participant group? Who are your partners? Who are you working with in the community? And who are your volunteers? You're going to need to include biographies for the key facilitators and the key cultural workers, because they may not be familiar with who those folks are. So you're going to want to show that they are qualified to be able to do this work. And again, where is it going to be happening? The community and venue is also. Just so you're aware, eligible projects must start no sooner than 8 weeks after the deadline, which in this case is March 15th, and must end within 12 months of the project start date. So let's talk about, you're going to have to, again, continuing on with the other questions that are going to be happening here, you're going to want to discuss and be able to address how this project is going to provide cultural opportunities for youth to 4 to 19 who experience financial barriers. Impact, this objectives and impact questions are kind of related. So what is the change that you're working towards in your community? How will this project help bring that change? What is your long-term goal? Have you thought about the legacy? Is there future plans for this project, or is this just a one-off? How will this inspire future involvement in cultural activity? So you need to be able to be prepared to explain a little bit about the impact that you're trying to have through the project and why you're doing it. That is the big why question. So it's an important one. You're going to want to make sure that you are being quite clear with that. Again, partnerships, who you're working with. The letters of support and community support. This one is optional. We say letters of support are optional. I would never take the option not include those. They really do prove to the peer assessors that the community is in support of what you're doing. They really love seeing letters of support from youth participants who are excited or asking for this type of programming. So yeah, letters of support are actually important, although they are only optional. And then the budget. This is where they're going to assess whether you're being realistic and responsible with the use of funds. They're going to want some details. How much are you providing for each person, for each hour, for each activity? How much are you spending on supplies? Getting very specific, as much detail as you possibly can in there. I've done a webinar on budgets already. I've provided a link at the bottom of this page to that webinar where I spend about 45 minutes going into depths as to what we're looking for with our budgets with these project grants. So I feel free to go onto SaskCulture's YouTube page and find that Budgets 101 webinar for more details on that. Now I'm going to talk about some tips on this. Some of this I've already kind of talked about, but I'm going to bring it back up again. Impact, again, the why is so important when it comes to grant writing. That is where you actually have the heart and the feelings and get to the minds of the peer assessors in this way. If it's so important and the impact that you're going to have is going to, or that you're trying to have, is going to be so important to the community, they might have a hard time saying no. You're going to want to make sure your impact statement is really, really strong. Again, making sure that you are paying the Carfax fees is really important. You're going to remember that the peer assessors are people who are usually cultural workers working in the community. So when they are looking at that, they're looking to see whether you're paying people fairly or whether you're inflating your costs as well. So that's why the Carfax tool is a really great resource, because it gives you exactly what you should be paying, not over or under, and gets you very clear, gets you quite detailed in that. Again, making sure you have details. I receive a lot of applications with the lack of detail as to who, what, where, when, and how much it's all going to cost. So making sure that you've really thought through everything. Your project description should line up with your budget. Those two should speak directly to each other. So if I see things in the budget that are not included in the project description, there might be questions about that, and vice versa. If I see reference to things in the project description and they're not included in the budget, we might have some questions about the realistic and responsible use of funds. Partnerships, again, make sure you're working with others or trying to work with others, not duplicating services or programming that's already existing in community. Again, the letters of support, really, really important. And then every grant has a guideline. Sorry. Every grant has a guideline. So read them, know them. When I was in the position of writing grants, I've done a number of those in my lifetime. I would have the guidelines right next to me the whole entire time I was writing a grant, just to ensure that I was following the rules and that I was not trying to apply for things that were not eligible. I was not trying to apply for activities that were ineligible, and that I was just really providing all of the clear information that they were looking for. So again, here's the link right here to our guidelines. So feel free to go on there and look at that quite in-depthly if you are looking to apply. And again, I suggest and request that you please contact me for this grant prior to submitting an application. I can help to make sure that you are coming down the right path. There are various different ways to fund some of those activities that may not be eligible, and I'm quite well versed in the funding programs, so I can try to point you in the right direction if we are not it. But if we are it, I will help you to get through that as well. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the top 10 reasons proposals get rejected. Usually there's a poor fit for the organization or programs. So these are organizations where you have someone applying to SaskCulture for a sport project. That's not a good fit. Our grants are about supporting culture in the community. Or someone applying for an elders program through this grant. That doesn't fit. It needs to be for youth between the 4 to 19. So those are the poor fits that sometimes happen. People are not adhering to the guidelines. Impact is not clear or provided. So people are doing something, but they don't know why, and they don't know what their goal is in the long run. So making sure you're quite clear on the why and what the goal is that you're trying to change. So that way you can evaluate it and see if you've been able to be successful in that impact. Again, duplication of services, another reason why proposals get rejected. If we see, there's two projects already happening in the same community and they're not working together, that shows there's a disconnect in the community and there might be a decline coming because of that. Blanket proposals or fishing expeditions are also one of the reasons why proposals get rejected. Again, those are usually poor fits. Is the end result of a blanket proposal is you're a poor fit. You haven't looked to see whether what you're doing is aligning with what the organization's goals are or what the grant program's goals are. There's no long-term goal anticipated. So this is a one-off project. You don't have a plan for moving forward. Sustainability is not anticipated. They might just feel like that's not going to have the impact that you're trying to have, so they might decline you on that. There's unrealistic expectations. So you're trying to take on potentially too much with a certain amount of budget or within a certain amount of time frame that is unrealistic. They will feel, the peer assessors may at that point feel that it's too high of a risk to fund you. So you're going to want to make sure you're realistic in your expectations. They also get rejected due to inaccurately vague information, or it's poorly written. I always suggest people have someone outside of the project review it just for clarity. If they are not connected to it at all and they can read it and understand clearly what you're trying to do, then you're good. If they have questions, then that's a great opportunity to try to fill out those things in the application a little bit more. There's no or unclear donor recognition, and then there's a lack of evidence of community support. So there's no letters of support. So there's no evidence that the community actually supports the project. So that is a reason why proposals do get rejected. So again, I'm going to reiterate that this grant you can get up to $7,500 with no applicant contribution required. And the deadline is only once a year on March 15th. So if you are looking to do anything within the next year, you're going to want to get that application in before March 15th. And that is it. So if you are interested in further information, there's the Creative Kids Saskatchewan website there, as well as SaskCulture's website, which is where you're going to go if you are looking to fill in an application. It is online, so you're going to want to click on that link to get to the online application. If you have any questions, like I said, or you want to pitch an idea, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to help you guys try to navigate this as best you can. Feel free to also follow us on Twitter and Facebook for any upcoming learning opportunities. I am planning a tour of the Northern District in the first week of March. So we are going to be doing some grant writing workshops where myself and someone from the Saskatchewan Arts Board are going to be coming into the communities and providing these training and tips and giving a lot more information on how these grants work in a face-to-face place setting. So you'll be able to ask those questions one-on-one. So keep an eye out on our websites and our Facebook for those upcoming opportunities in the north. It doesn't look like anyone has had any questions for me. So that, if there are any questions, now is the time to ask. Oh, I think I see some. Sorry, let me try to get, okay, that's not the one I want. Sorry, a little bit of technical difficulties. Okay, you have a question. What's your question, Kristen? Oh, I can't. Although Dance Saskatchewan is not in the region, yes, you are eligible to apply. I would highly, highly suggest that you are partnered with the communities and the communities are bringing you in as opposed to you trying to go and do that type of activity. You are in a lower priority due to already receiving significant lottery dollars. You are eligible still to apply, but you're going to want to make sure that your partnerships are really, really strong and that they are bringing you in as opposed to the other way. Well, I would try to assist them with writing of the grant and work together on that. That's the joy of the online system that we have set up right now. You can have multiple people working on an application at one time. You just need to be able to give each other access, and then you can build it together in collaboration. So that's a way to kind of work around that one. Okay. Were there any other? Oh, thank you very much for the information. Should we ask the communities to write the grant? Yes, the community should write the grant. Are there any other questions for me? I'm gonna leave it open for a second. If not, Feel free to go ahead and contact me after. I'm here to help, guide you through everything. Oh, I just sent a question. I don't know why. We just finished music. Have a lot of support and as well as okay. I cannot. Sorry about this, folks. I don't know why I can't. Let me just expand this as big as I can. Can you come up to Stanley Mission? Um, I will be close to Stanley Mission. We will be, the plan right now is to be in Creighton, to be in La Ronge, and then to be in Ile-à-la-Crosse. So those are as close as I'm gonna get at that point. I want to do a Sitteract activity that will be for kids, youth, but I would like to combine it with additional resources, adults resources. So someone has asked me a question about combining additional resources with adults, and the resource will be teaching both. You can do that. Like I said, this program really is focused on the youth for 4 to 19. So those costs may be eligible, but they're going to be on a lower priority because, like I said, it is mostly for youth of 4 to 19. We're trying to hit that group. We do have other funding programs that address the larger community. We want a music teacher and a program in our school. You can hire a service provider to come in after hours to do that type of activity with the youth, but that is, we cannot go within school hours, and we can't pay for like a teacher within the school hours. But if you have a music teacher, we've seen people like hire someone in the community who knows how to teach guitar to bring them in after hours to the school to teach the children guitar. So that is an eligible activity. And I don't know if I have any others here. I'm trying to see. Yeah. Are there any other? I hope I answered your question okay there, Kathy and Daryl. If not, feel free to email me afterwards. Um, so we'd like to, yeah, if you guys have any further questions, please feel free to get a hold of me. If not, I might just sign off here. Unless there are any further questions, I'll give you guys another 30 seconds. Okay, folks. Well, I think that is it for me. If there are no questions, again, if you are interested or if you know people who are, please feel free to send them my direction. Again, my information is there. We will also be sending out a copy of the webinar after within the next 24 hours. You'll be getting a copy of this directly to your inboxes. So if you'd like to rewatch it or share it with others, you can do it that way as well. And then it'll end up on our YouTube page in the long run. So thank you very much for logging in today. If you have any questions, reach out. If not, have a wonderful afternoon. Try and stay warm. I know we're in the middle of a blizzard down here in the south, so I hope you guys are staying warm up there in the north. All right, take care.